right, so welcome. And thank you for showing up, being here, signing on. Yesterday was Blackout Tuesday, and that kind of times when we're doing this, gives you the idea of why we want to do this. And Blackout Tuesday was a day where many companies showed their solidarity for Black people in America, and especially in light of what's been happening with George Floyd. And we at the Boys and Girls Club, we wanted to take a moment to, yes, stand in solidarity, but also do more. We wanted to provide a place for people where they could feel supported, where they could also feel that their voices are heard, where they can get some guidance from people who are struggling. I mean, a lot of times we don't even really know what to say in this time. So, my name is Duane Wilson. I am the COO, Chief Operating Officer at the Boys and Girls Club, and I am joined by two site directors here, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
My name is Constance, Giles. I'm Unit Director at the OC Carmichael Youth Center, Boys and Girls Club, the main site. I'm a single mother of two, a 9-year-old and 11-year-old. This is my community, South Bend, Indiana. Here I am.
My name is Maurice Walker. I'm a site director of Compass Club. Compass Club is our before and after care program that we run in all of our Mishawaka elementary schools to kind of put a human component on everything that's going on. I'm from Gary, Indiana. My parents both moved here individually during the second half of the Great Migration. The Great Migration was this huge exodus of Black people from the South who were looking to escape Jim Crow. My grandparents were last generation sharecroppers. So I feel like ingrained in my family's blood has always been like a want and desire to find better for the next generation. I'm a father to a soon-to-be 3-year-old Black boy, and I feel that same desire to want to shape and mold a better world for him to grow up in, to avoid some of the pitfalls that my grandparents had to face, to avoid some of the obstacles that my parents had to deal with raising 3 Black sons, and to avoid the anger and the frustration that I'm dealing with right now. Sounds like a lot, but it's my story, it's my family story, and I'm extremely proud of it.
And so in addition to me being the COO of the Boys and Girls Club, I'm excited to do this because as a Black man, as a Black father who unfortunately had to give the same talk to his sons that my dad gave to me and my grandfather gave to him, I have this bifurcated mind of what could be and the reality of the way things actually are. I grew up in the military, so things were pretty easy. Everyone got along, even to the point where I had military police and security police who were friends. We were part of the team, but because my extended family's from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, I'm also way too acquainted with the racism that exists there and everywhere else. And so having the experience of what could be and the experience of what is, I always want to move in the area of what could be and want to be a part of the solution. So I believe that this is going to be the beginning of the solution with great people who are going to share their experiences. What's going on with you? What are you thinking about?
A mix of emotions, anger, sadness. I have brothers, I got uncles, I got cousins, all males. So just because I'm a female, I'm directly affected by this as well. I had the task of having to explain this situation to my children a few nights ago, and it was hard.
But what I don't often hear is moms saying they're having their talk with their daughter. That is very intriguing to me. If you can, talk a little bit about that.
Just because they are girls doesn't mean that they don't have the same rules as the boys have as well. I had to teach them how to keep their hands visible, explain to them why they have to keep their hands visible when they're pulled over, and what can happen to them if their hands are not visible. Because not only have black males been killed, but females have been killed too. Having to explain that to a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old, it's rough. Having your kid have to ask you why are people angry with us because I didn't choose for my skin to be this color. We didn't ask to be like this, so why are they angry? Why they don't like us? What answer do you give your kids? What do you say? What do you say to that? It's not no answer. It's no answer to ignorance.
If I could dig a little deeper into your conversation, what did you say?
There's no answer to ignorance.
And what was their response?
They cried.
Maurice, as an African American man, I will make the assumption, I would hope that I'm wrong, but I will make the assumption you've had these kinds of experiences. Talk about how the incident in Minneapolis with the death of George Floyd, how did that impact you and what's going through your mind?
I think the initial thought is like a feeling of hopelessness, because it seems as if it's kind of like this endless cycle, right? Whether it's George Floyd or Trayvon Martin or Tamir Rice, we have these incidents where it seems as if my complexion is reason to be treated as less of a person than other people. And it's difficult. Like that feeling of hopelessness turns to anger, that anger turns to destruction, and I think that's explains a lot of what you're seeing in the streets, right? People are angry, they're fed up. They've kind of given up on the belief that the system is supposed to work with equity, let alone equality. With that, it's just a state of being and not really knowing where you belong, but knowing that you exist. And it's rough, man. I've been in situations too. I went to Indiana State, and there's like this small town going down Interstate 41 called Kentland, and I remember like being pulled over once. It's like this real big hill that you always go down, and so you go up the incline, go down the incline, and I'm coming down, and of course physics, you're going a little bit faster. So as I'm coming down the hill, a trooper like buzzes me, pulls me over, and he kind of grills me, about why I was speeding, and I kind of just throw back, hey, I was coming down the hill, I didn't really have a chance to de-accelerate or whatever, and it was like before I knew it, I was outside of the car, the contents of my car being like ripped out, thrown out. I had like a tote full of clothes because I'm going home to do laundry, right? Going home for fall break, and I remember kind of just sitting on the side of the road, like handcuffed, and I'm just thinking like, for what? And who do I call when like the police are unfair? Right. Like who helps me in that position? And like ever since then, I've always wanted to be wrong about my thoughts on society and my thoughts about how I'm treated, because not only am I a black man, but a large black man, so that comes with another set of perception issues, right? And I guess just to put a button on it, like it's a rough existence. Right. I mean, personally, I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, I am who I am because it is what God intended, right? And I have to live in that every day. And as fathers, as mothers, as community leaders, we have to make sure that people who look like us get that same affirmation.
So most of us, we spend our lives trying to avoid getting in the predicament and the situation that you were in. So if you could talk about kind of what did in that moment, how did that make you feel? And then what would you say to other people who've been in that situation?
The first feeling is confusion, right? Because I think we all kind of hear this narrative when things happen, and it's, well, what did you do wrong? Or maybe if you would have just listened, or you shouldn't have had, if you're not doing anything wrong, you've got nothing to worry about, right? Now, here I am, a person who grew up in Gary. I'm going to school because that's what society says. You go to college, right? I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm leaving college, going home for fall break with nothing but a tote full of clothes and my Camaro. And just because I push back verbally a little bit about my speed, I end up outside my car, handcuffed, with my car just being like torn through as if it's like some type of search and seizure. They pull off and I'm just left on the side of the road, confused, still gotta put my car back together. And I think initially, it's human nature to kind of blame yourself, like, well, what did I do wrong, right? Like, if maybe I just shut up, like, had it even gotten that far? And I think as I've gotten older, the human reaction of appropriately talking back, because we're all humans, right? The concept of like questioning authority, like, shouldn't be justification to be treated unfairly.
Right.
Shouldn't be justification to be handled in a way that you wouldn't handle somebody who doesn't look like you. So I wish I had an answer for the second part of the question of what I tell other people, because unfortunately I don't think it matters really what you do. If it's a perfect situation and I'm in a 3-piece suit and I'm driving a new BMW, I can be profiled. If I'm wearing a hoodie and some sneakers, the same thing can happen. I don't think it's for us to have to be better. I think it's on society to have to be better.
Right. I want to pick up on, I'm going to ask you both a question about human reaction. One observation that I made about this incident, you said, Maurice, earlier that it's a cycle. This is an ongoing thing. But one difference that I observed is the immediacy of the reaction of the public.
People tired. It's tired.
Yeah.
Again, it's a cycle, like you said. It's just keep happening over and over when it's something gonna be done. Can't bring them back.
Right.
It feels like this nation was already like a powder keg of emotion. I mean, we're it's almost funny to remember that we're still living in a pandemic, right?
Right.
Like a literal global pandemic in which for the past 3 months, many of us have had stay-at-home orders, and people have been without work, without being able to see their loved ones. People have lost loved ones, and I think when you mix the emotion and the fear with that, it's like this visceral reaction from what not only happened in Minnesota, but what happened in Louisville to Breonna Taylor. It sparks something. I mean, you're seeing around the nation and around the world places that haven't historically really had Black representation and Black celebration, that, you see the marching in, you see the protesting, and I hope this is the energy that's sustainable and that can cause change, because I think that's the only way that we can actually get like some actionable change if we actually stay engaged.
Right. So actionable change and staying engaged. You both are responsible, as well as other unit directors. We ultimately are all responsible for shaping, building, feeding into the lives of young people. And so there are a countless number of young people like your daughters who are having this reaction. And so when we start club back up, or what do you say to those young people who might be listening now? How do we engage them so that we can help them be a part of the change as well?
I think being intentional. One thing kids are really good at is perception. Like, they know when you actually care about what you're talking to them about. They know when it's lip service. They know when a person is literally like seeing them as a whole person. So I think just telling the kids that I see you, right? I hear you. And I think sometimes as adults, we kind of fall into the habit of like talking to children more than we should listen. And so I think giving, especially our teen population, giving them the platform and the ability to be heard by us. Because a lot of these issues that stem happens because we don't feel like we're heard by society.
Right.
And so I think we have an obligation here at Club to make sure our children are seen and heard.
Right.
I think that's a great first step for us.
Agreed.
So we just were talking about the community of the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the larger community that we can have an impact upon, Michiana or South St. Joseph County. I'll have to say one thing I was fairly pleased at is that we kept the violence to a minimum, the riots to a minimum, and there were, in South Bend, there were peaceful marches, even at the police station. And I saw a real community, lots of different people at the community involved in that, which kept the conversation about the issue of police brutality against Black men or Black people. And so how do we keep this going? How do we not let that be an event, but make this be a movement? We like the term movement. How do we make this a movement where we're really moving toward reconciliation and peace and justice?
We can't let it die down. We gotta keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's gotta be something that we keep doing. Like you said, like you can't just stop after this week. You gotta do it next week. You gotta keep walking the week after, the week after. Just something we gotta keep doing.
I think making sure that we all understand that this isn't a Black problem, it's an American problem.
Right.
It's unfair to ask a person who is being oppressed to say that you're responsible for fixing said oppression. So it's not a Black issue, it's an American issue. I think to be able to identify whatever community you're in, whether it's Mishawaka, South Bend, Gary, Indianapolis, identifying the people with influence and power and making sure these people are engaged, because it's those people who have the influence and the power to be able to put pressure on the system, to get some tangible change. And making sure we keep it up. Like this isn't, I would hate for it to be a situation where we're really loud for a long time, it dies off until the next time it happens.
Right.
I mean, we've had enough. We've had enough loss, right? I think making sure we engage civically, making sure we're voting is extremely important.
Absolutely.
With action nonetheless.
Right. So speaking of action, I received a lot of emails and texts from either former white colleagues or white friends, and what's different, asking me, am I okay?
Yeah.
Which is very different than any other event that's happened. And I say that a little tongue in cheek, but what I have settled on is these are people in my life who really care. And for some reason, this incident has prompted them to want to really do something and see something different. And there's just, I just hear it, and I try to call each of them back.
Yeah.
And so, what would you say to that person?
I feel like they need to use their voice too, and not just to you or not just to me. Just reaching out to me is not good enough to me. I feel like being quiet is being part of the problem. I was totally shocked. I went downtown Saturday and I seen the protest in front of the Maurice, and it was literally, I would say probably 70% white people. And I was shocked. Like I sat there, I called my mom, I turned the video around, she was like, are they anti-protest? I was like, no, they signs say Black Lives Matter. And like it was, I just sat there like, what? Like this is crazy. Because if you look on social media, all the videos is of Black people tearing stuff up and going crazy, and that's all you see. But just the fact that there's white people too out here that they feel like we feel.
Yeah.
You know, it just feel like y'all gotta use your voice to help us.
So that's the message, help us by using your voice.
Yeah, I think a great first step is opening your heart to listen to somebody. I can understand that many people, many white people have led a life that when you hear some of these stories that we go through, it can be mind-boggling. In another job I had, I met a friend who's Mennonite, and our two lives are probably like as far as you can imagine.
Right.
And so when we first started having these discussions, I was telling him we had a professional development, and I got pulled over in Granger looking for another coworker's house. And I got to the guy's house late, and I'm telling the guy I got pulled over, and I didn't think anything of it. And my friend goes, "But what'd you do?" I said, "No, I was driving through Granger looking for the house, and I'm driving real slow. I've got a Monte Carlo with tinted windows. Guy pulled me over, like whatever." He's like, "No, but like, why'd he pull you over?" I said, "Hey man, like, how much time do you have?"
Right.
And I guess it was that moment that I realized that some people legitimately have this life experience that it doesn't let them understand.
Right.
So I think listening to Black people, having your heart open, and if you're not in a situation where you may have Black friends or Black coworkers, there's somewhere that you can volunteer at and hear Black voices.
Right.
So whether it's the Boys and Girls Club, whether it's the Y, whether it's any type of community center or community organization where you can lend your efforts to people who don't look like you, people
Right.
who are underserved and underprivileged, putting some skin in the game.
You know, we are in an awesome place in the Boys and Girls Club. We're coming out of the pandemic through this chaos, that we have this vision to impact all young people in all of the community. And so this is hopefully will be an ongoing conversation. Hopefully this will be something that we continue to address, that we continue to get your insight from, that we continue to get your insight from, and additional folks as well, that we can really begin moving this heavy, heavy rock of creating systemic change so that people's lives are different and people respond to each other differently. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.